You're listening to Design Between the Lines, the only design and home furnishings podcast where we talk with the movers and shakers, industry innovators, and lifetime legends of the home furnishings industry. It's here that I get a chance to sit and chat with the influencers shaping the industry into what it is today. Today we welcome Karen McNeill, CEO of the prestigious American Home Furnishings Hall of Fame. No stranger to the design world, Karen's expertise is deeply rooted in over 35 years in the home furnishings industry and bolstered by a breadth of work in marketing and journalism. Furthered by her vast nonprofit advocacy and community service, the multitude of leadership roles held throughout her career have left an indelible mark on both her clients and her contemporaries. Karen, welcome to Design Between the Lines.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to have you here. I'm in awe because you've been on camera so many times and done so many broadcasts and in voice and for film. I hope I live up to your expertise.
It's a low bar.
Well, I wanted to start by kind of reaching back into your beginnings and your educational background, sort of where your career path started. You want to go back that far? I mean, for me, it's forever. So you're just a couple of years ago.
Well, I went to the University of Missouri School of Journalism and ended up with 2 degrees. What I went there for was to go into broadcast news. But they made a mistake on my transcript, and I worked harder than any other student there. And at the end, when I was ready to graduate, they said, if you will take just one more class over the summer after you graduate, you will have a double major. So my second major is actually in advertising, having no intentions at that point of ever going into marketing or having anything to do with public relations or advertising. So actually, that background that I got in college by chance has served me very, very well.
Wow. So that was sort of a surprise at that moment. I mean, you said, oh my goodness, double
Well,
major.
actually, it was a crisis in my life because when the counselor told me that I was graduating in May, and this was like in April, I thought I had another semester to go. So I had not done a resume. I had not sent out a resume. And all I could think of was my parents are going to kill me because I'm graduating and I don't have a job. But as life would have it, so I walked into the broadcast studio, actually, and told my advisor that I was very upset because I didn't have a job and I was graduating in just a matter of a few weeks. And he had just gotten a call from CBS. So my first job was actually with CBS. And I had that job within just minutes of the time that I found out I was graduating.
Wow. Serendipity.
It was.
Unbelievable. Well, all right, you started out in broadcasting. Any early mentors or people who inspired you at that stage of your early stage of your career?
Oh, I was just working with amazing people, and it was like a sponge just soaking it all in. But you have to remember, I just graduated from college. I was absolutely the lowest on the totem pole. And as the result of that, they gave me all the stories that they didn't want to do. So I had some very interesting experiences, but because of that, I also really grew a great deal because it was phenomenal, the people that I was working with.
So you pretty much, you were thrown a job right out of and said, okay, do this.
Oh, I graduated on Thursday and started work on Monday.
Holy mackerel. Yeah, that's a little bit of pressure there. And your parents were happy though, right?
Oh, they were delighted.
Well, what attracted you? How did you get from where you started there kind of towards into the design industry and the marketing side of design?
Well, it was all serendipity. I was in the news media, and I have been in trade publications. Really, I would have to go back to Fairchild Publications, and I was a bureau chief of Fairchild Publications in Atlanta. They had 10 trade publications, one being HFN, Home Furnishings Daily,
right,
and one being Women's Wear Daily. I did most of my work for Women's Wear Daily and a little bit for Home Furnishings Daily. But because I was in Atlanta, I covered the furniture markets that were in Atlanta, which at that time was also very heavily into furniture. It was much more in furniture than what it is today, caskets and upholstery. And I saw that and said, this really ought to be about the fashion of life. So I convinced my editors that we should not just do apparel fashion. I was fashion editor. That not just do apparel fashion, but that we really ought to also do home fashion. So 3 weeks out of the month, it would be on apparel fashion, and 1 week out of the month, it would be on home fashion in Atlanta. I came up to High Point to actually cover a furniture market up here, and I interviewed Bob Grunberg, who was then head of SFMC, the Southern Furniture Market Center, which is now IHFC, which then became IMC. And at that point, I didn't understand it all. I was just coming up here for a market.
Right.
Dallas was trying to take over High Point. And a woman named Bobby Martin, who was on TV here in the Triad, told him what you need to do to keep the market from going to Dallas is you need to have somebody really strong on your team who has been an editor. And lo and behold, Bob reached out to me and offered me this job, and of which I had no interest in taking. But I realized it would be an amazing opportunity because I would be given so much responsibility. And I decided to take it thinking I would be here 2 years. Well, the sawdust very quickly got into my veins, and here I am 40 years later.
Wow. Yeah, that's, we just keep saying the word serendipity, but things just, there was something in the cosmos that pushed this all together. Had to be.
Oh, no, now this is where it gets even more interesting. So my family had a very small business, and my mother ran the business, and my father did all of the selling. Well, that business, by chance, was the funeral business. And my parents sold the clothing to funeral homes. So my father sold to funeral homes. And funeral homes at that time also had the ambulance services, but they also often had a furniture store because the wooden caskets, they would often have a funeral business and a furniture store with it. So I was in and out of furniture stores as a little child with my father, who would sometimes take us. And I bought my first piece of furniture. Well, actually, my father bought it for me, but I was 7 years old, and I picked out a small rocking chair, which I still have to this day.
Oh,
now, also, the family decided, my mother was from Sweden, was a first generation from Sweden. That family actually came over from Småland, Sweden in the 1880s. And the family decided for some reason that I should receive the furniture that was given to the couple, my grandparents, great-grandparents that came over from Sweden, which I still have. So they came over in the 1880s, and I have their bedroom furniture, which is now in a guest room. So I had this great love of furniture as a small child. And then on top of that, my mother really, for whatever reason, who grew up in a farm in a very small place in South Dakota, decided that she should hire an interior designer when I was in perhaps junior high. And nobody hired interior designers. But she got me very involved in working with this interior designer, and I've always had an appreciation for the furniture in our home and for interior design, really because of those things.
I have to say, in my younger days when I was on the road in the Midwest, I called on several furniture stores who were also the local funeral directors, and ran the ambulance service as well in the middle of Indiana, as a matter of fact. So we share a little something there. That's amazing. So that kind of got you into the furniture world. A 2-year stint turned out to be a much longer stint, and now this begs the question about the American Home Furnishings Hall of Fame and your story as their CEO. How did that start? How did you get associated or connected with that? I know you had a career with your own agency. When did that start after the, I guess we'll call it IHFC, IMC.
Right. I was with IHFC for 5 years. And then I started my first agency. I've started 2 agencies, which are both still in existence. I'm very proud of that fact that they're still functioning and that they tell me that they're still using a lot of the systems and techniques that we set up. But I started the marketing agent. My job was marketing director at IHFC. So then I started this marketing agency, and many years later, when my predecessor at the Hall of Fame retired, she was actually in her 80s, retired, they needed someone. So a couple of members of the board came to me, Leroy Lale and Don Coleman and Steve Kincaid, and I said, no, we're a marketing agency. We don't want to run a nonprofit. But they kept coming back and saying, your name keeps popping up. And I said, okay, well, what do you need? And they said, well, we have this event. And I thought, well, we do lots of events. And then we need somebody who knows the furniture industry. And I said, well, I do know a lot of people in the industry. And then I thought, well, we can do it. We're able to do it. We should give back to the industry that I had come to love and consider myself to be very involved with. So I said, okay, we'll do it. Well, we got into it, and it was not exactly what I thought we were going to get into. And one of the things that I discovered that the Hall of Fame was doing was conducting oral interviews. I realized that these oral interviews, which were literally the transcripts were typewritten in a box and not shared with anyone, but I realized that they were amazing gems and unbelievable. And I started thinking about how over time, this historical record, so it's not just, it is the person's story and the story about the company, but it also has questions like, what was the role of women? Or what were race relations? Or what were the changes in manufacturing? Or what were the changes in leadership and management? Oh, by the way, let me tell you that we have discovered that leadership and management are really contemporary terms. And in the early oral interviews that were done, that's never mentioned. It's head office or the boss. There is no mention of leadership.
Leadership, yeah.
Or for management. But anyway, I looked at this and I said, over time, this would be building an amazing body of work. And it also has questions in it about design trends. And so now, going forward all these years, because we have search engines, you could search, and we've gone in and tagged things like leadership and management. You could go in and search, and it will pull up from, we've done more than 60 oral interviews now. It will pull up across everyone what they had to say about leadership, or what they had to say about management, or what they had to say about women. Wow. And so it's this amazing, amazing body of work. That got our whole organization really interested. We started publishing the books, so that, and they're also online digitally, but you can also buy the books. And then we started thinking about, well, we're looking backwards. Why aren't we looking forward? Yeah. And that is where we started to get into the leadership initiative. So really, what started out as a client then became something that our whole team became quite excited about through the years. And then when I sold my second agency, now for the last 4 years, I've been full-time with the Hall of Fame. But actually, I've been CEO of the Hall of Fame for 14 years, but now full-time.
Oh, wow. You've done a lot of work for nonprofits. That was probably a little bit of an enlightening experience, I would think, coming from where you were, kind of more of a profit-motivated business, to dealing with clients that are nonprofit. How much of that was a shock or eye-opening?
Well, first of all, my parents always were very involved. So really, I started working for nonprofits as a volunteer when I was a little girl. So I've had a lot of experience with nonprofits, and I always found that work very rewarding. But I never looked at it as a nonprofit. We've always run it as a business. And I think that's one of the things that our board members appreciate, they're so amazed at the thought process and the record keeping. And to me, being an entrepreneur, a good idea and a great idea, we just need to figure out how to do it. It's never about how have we been doing it, but rather it's about, wow, that would be really amazing. And I love the phone conversations when our board members call, and I get this, frequently, fortunately, and they'll call and they'll say, I'm sure you probably already thought of this, but have you ever thought about doing XYZ? And it's like, oh my goodness, what a great idea. And then we just figure out a way to do it.
That is a very good, your train of thought there is so different than what I've heard other nonprofits do, because you're basically just saying, how can we get this done? It's a great idea. Let's make it happen. That's a great attitude. Let me ask you a question about High Point. What makes High Point unique as opposed to other major markets in the furniture industry?
High Point is totally committed to market. People come, thousands of people come into town. They take over the city. But the people who live here, it's in the DNA. The personality of High Point is to be personal, the personal relationships. And I think that is what makes High Point so different, is this total commitment, this total involvement, entertaining in a home, though you may rent it, but still bringing a buyer to your home, your High Point home, and entertaining.
Recently, not too recently, there has been a move towards, with First Tuesday and High Point by Design and other things coming along, of really creating a design center, if you will, a design destination out of High Point between and around markets. I think you have a relationship to that in some way, don't you?
I do. I was director of the design center when I was at IHFC. We built that building, and I was there for a couple of expansions, but we did actually have the showrooms open on a day-to-day basis. We had 3 women who worked full-time, but we could never really get to critical mass with that. But now it's different. And one of the big problems with opening the showrooms all those years ago was that all of the pricing was done by hand.
Yeah.
And many exhibitors said, we can't have consumers in here because it's a wholesale price.
Yeah.
Or it's the stocking dealer price. Whereas now it's a technology issue. You push a button and all of the pricing changes. So there's a real technology reason for why. And also, when I came to High Point, Bob Gruenberg was brilliant. It was, the market was started by Southern manufacturers and owners, that they were the ones who owned SFMC, then became IHFC. And they were very Southern, and they were very traditional. But there were 2 things that made Bob very different. First of all, Bob was from New York. He was, I believe, grew up in the Bronx. And Bob wasn't one of the Southern boys. Also, Bob loved contemporary. And he said the future of furniture is in contemporary. And where do we get contemporary furniture? Well, you have to go to Europe. So Bob said this market could be so much bigger than just the Southern manufacturers. So Bob was the one that started bringing in accessories. Bob was the one, a huge push when I was there, that started when I was there, was to bring in Italian manufacturers. We wooed and wooed and wooed Natuzzi, for example, who never moved into the building. But it was bringing over Italian leather, was Germany, and we had French companies. So it was this expansion and growth of the market to be all of the categories. When I was there, we tried to get the carpet industry to move into High Point. So then we realized that wasn't going to happen because that was connected with the building industry, more of the construction side, building homes, than it was with furnishing the homes. So then the switch was, while I was there, to area rugs, Oriental rugs, and area rugs. So that was a huge expansion of this whole industry. The point being that now to come to market on a day-to-day basis, whether it's First Tuesday or for
High Point by Design.
yeah, High Point by
right.
Design, you are an interior designer or a retailer is coming here and they can shop all of the categories.
Right. Exactly.
So I would say the big difference is technology was a huge issue, and secondly, that the market has grown, exponentially in terms of the amount of product and the category, and then also the opening to interior designers. And so when I was there, Bob said, we have to get the interior designers here, who were unwelcome here.
Yeah.
And we actually hosted the national meeting for ASID. And we had the national meeting for ASID here, which was a very big thing. And Bob said to me, you are in charge of this. And if this doesn't go well, neither will your job.
Bob was always direct. That was the New York
He was
in him.
very direct.
Yeah.
But that is how intentional he was about opening High Point up to other categories, to contemporary, to high-end, and also to interior designers.
Well, you mentioned trends and growth and movements and how things grew from small to larger and in different directions. In your opinion, how is design and design marketing shifting to accommodate today's consumers? How do you see changes occurring in that?
I think one of the biggest changes is the idea of lifestyle. And the reason this is so significant and such a big shift is that it used to be, going back to the Southern manufacturers, that the companies were organized around manufacturing. So you were a bedroom manufacturer, you were a dining room manufacturer, you were a table manufacturer, you were an upholstery manufacturer, and also by categories. Now with the shift, you can design whole home. There are two major issues that the American consumer has. Number one, they have no idea about scale. So they would have the tiniest table with a huge sofa, or a lamp that was huge on a little table, and that they didn't get scale. And the second thing was they did not understand how to meld together color and pattern. Just did not understand that whatsoever. So by, again, offering lifestyle, it solves that problem. The second thing that I would say would be TV and the live streaming shows, which inspires people and also teaches people. And by doing this, they have more confidence in their decisions. So whether you go to a retail store that has a vignette, like Rooms to Go is based on this, Restoration Hardware is based on this, come in and buy the whole room, we've already done it for you, or these other shows, I think people have more confidence.
Yeah.
And then the third part of that would be delivery, that you can order it online, you can order it through a catalog, you can go to the store, and you can, and many stores now are doing same-day delivery.
Yeah, that's
and they
very cool.
want it right away.
Yeah.
A lot of people want whatever they're
Especially
doing.
now.
What they're doing right
Coming
away.
out of COVID, it's like we want it yesterday, right?
Right. And the TV shows and the live streaming have also taken away the veil about how do I bring in an interior designer into my home. So now it's cool to use an interior designer. So I think those three things have really changed the landscape.
Awesome. That is great, because many of our listeners, we talked about this earlier off camera, that are either design students of design, or people interested in design, and many of them are considering careers in design. And I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about careers in this industry, kind of as a spokesperson for the growth in our industry, both inclusivity and other things that are happening now that absolutely were absent when you came into this industry. Tell me a little bit about, as a woman, how things were when you entered this marketplace called the furniture industry, and what it's like today and where you see it going into the future. Big question.
When I came into this industry, there were no women. There just were none. If there was a woman in the industry, it was the wife of the owner of the company, or it was the woman who sat at the front desk. So they did not know how to deal with me. And I came into IHFC and I had the third parking spot, which was not significant to me, but I realized later it was extremely significant. I've always wondered who got bumped. I'm sure it created a lot of enemies. But when I would go into a showroom and I would say part of my job was, John, working with all of the new exhibitors, John, do you have any problems or what? Or they would tell me, they would say whatever, and I'd say, okay, and they'd say, could you please have Bill DiPaolo or Bob Grunberg come up here? Because I've really got to get this fixed. And we have walkie-talkies in.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say, I can take care of your problem. And I'd get on the walkie-talkie and I'd say, right now you need to come up here and get whatever. And they were shocked. And they called me the little woman. So that's what they call me, little woman. But that was fine with me. I've always been, if I'm at the table, I'm at the table. So I don't really care what you call me, I'm already at the table. But as with any career, it's taken me 40 years through experience, some success, but to get here. And much of it is just growing, learning, building your management skills, leadership skills, your people skills, your communication skills, and that just takes time. So I am thrilled to see now, for example, I was involved in With It at the very beginning, and it's to build leaders, it's to build women leaders, and I've continued to be involved with It. And that is a wonderful organization. The mentoring that goes on there is incredible. That is really how a lot of women are growing. But now you look at market, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a huge percentage, our market, are women that are here. And only naturally now, and through a lot of hard work, the same hard work you would go through, they're rising to the executive positions. I mean, look at Melinda Whittington now at Lazy Boy.
Yeah, making decisions. They're in decision-making
But it's from
positions.
years of experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
She didn't just show up on the, the screen of the business world. She's been recognized as a leader in the business world for a very long period of time. So it's happening, but unfortunately, experience takes a long time. You can't rush it. It just takes some time. And were I faced with the same situations now that I was when I first came to this industry, I'm sure I would handle things much differently because of my experience.
Which now brings me to the question of, because of your experience, I would love to hear you give a few words of advice to, let's say, young professionals and students that are considering this industry for a career. And obviously, I'm saying this industry, there are thousands of careers in this industry, from cutting a piece of lumber to make a board that goes into a piece, to boxing it, to selling it on a retail floor. But what would be some words of advice from you based on your experience to these young people thinking about a career here?
My advice would be to seek dissonance. Years ago, I was traveling, about 10 years ago, I was traveling, and I ended up at dinner with a man who was a composer and a conductor, classical music conductor, who I'd never met a person like this before. I had lots of questions. And in the process, I said something like, well, when you're composing, what makes a beautiful piece of music? And he said, dissonance. It cannot be exactly right or exactly perfect. There has to be something unexpected. There has to be some conflict in your music. And he said, think about the duets that you see that are done by music, that two totally different people, like a classical and a country music star, and they put these duets together. And he said there's always dissonance between the voices because the dissonance is what creates interest. And that just resonated with me, and I started noticing in design, for example, what makes a room interesting? It's the dissonance. It's something unexpected. It's a touch of red. It's an unusual function. It's a something that doesn't quite fit in is what creates dissonance. Now, if you just take this a little bit further, think about creativity. And today, too many young people are so focused on what they like, their friends, their social media. This is what I like. This is my style. I'm contemporary. I'm traditional. I'm this. I'm that. I would never talk to them because they have a different opinion or they have a different look. But I would say to you that I've always been curious about what's different from me. People, things, art in the art world. I know what I like. But the interesting part of it is what is different from me, and that is the dissonance with my own viewpoint that ends up creating the new ideas. So if we're always politically correct in our thinking, in our friends, in our reading, it really clamps down on the creativity because we're not getting different ideas.
Yes, you're exactly
So I would
right.
say seek dissonance in what you do, who you talk to, what you read, what you go look at. Seek dissonance.
Be open.
And then I think it will spark new ideas and new creativity.
It's as much about the experience as you say. I mean, that's what you're doing. And if you're reducing the amount of experience you have to this much, just a little tiny less, you're not open to other new ideas. And I love the thought of dissonance. Thank you very much for that big pearl of wisdom. But you're also creating this experience with the Hall of Fame. I mean, this is really not just, well, here we are, there's a wall, oh, look, there's pictures. There is an experiential element to this that's huge, that you're living our industry. You're not just walking in to see a wall with fun pictures that change. I mean, that's to me what you're creating with the stories, with the video booth, with telling a story in a way that's not just, well, here's a white piece of paper with some black writing on it, I think I'll read it. It's more a real experience that you're physically in person participating in. Is that not right?
Yes, it is. We want it to be inspiring. Whether this is going to be the gathering place for the industry. If you think about it during market, you want to get together with someone, and then you're going to go on to dinner, or you're going to go on to your other market. Where do you meet? There's no place to just go meet. Well, this is going to be the gathering place. We're going to be having seminars there. We're set up to be flexible, inspiring, flexible. We want this to be a discovery place. We want this to be a place where our industry comes and they talk and they discuss and they come up with new ideas. That's what the Hall of Fame is going to be. Right now, most people think of it as the event. And our events have become something that are truly amazing. Our speaker this year is going to be John Mackey with Whole Foods, for example. And he doesn't speak to many groups, but he was interested in, we have to provide a description of what our event is and the people who are attending. So that was easy to do. We're a group of entrepreneurs and business people, and the leaders will be there. It's not really a social event like you would normally think of.
Right.
And he was quite fascinated with this. In fact, so fascinated that the Speakers Bureau, you don't understand, we're now on our 4th date for the event. And he said, this just never happens. He would, first of all, accept to come and speak to you, but that also he's willing to go through 4 changes because he really has things he wants to say to you. And oh, by the way, not a penny goes in his pocket. He gives every single penny of it away.
Wow. I'm thinking, there's your dissonance, right? You're bringing someone from a whole different industry and another point of view to the decision makers in our industry, to the leadership. It's about the exposure. That's our leadership initiative, is all about exposure and about inspiring a future generation. It's about networking and about creating this web of support and knowledge and information for future leaders. Well, speaking to our future leaders who are listening right now, please listen up. Those are great points that Karen just made over the last few minutes. We're welcoming. We're here for you. Just reach out. And if we see you, We're happy to answer questions. We're happy to introduce you to others and make your life experience and career in our industry. I think we've actually done a really good job of describing what the Hall of Fame is going to be. What's the schedule for this?
Well, very soon we are going to be making an announcement. You know, COVID turned everybody on their ear,
Yes.
including us. But the fundraising is going really, really well. And so we are going to be making some pretty big announcements soon.
Awesome.
Soon. So the time frame will be next year.
Awesome. Great. We look forward to seeing what that announcement's all going to be about and seeing you out there presenting it along with your board. And the event this year, what's the fourth date that you've reached?
Sunday, October 17th.
Okay, great. Well, that's the day before the Pinnacle Awards, which
Yes,
is on Monday night.
So it's the warm-up.
Awesome. Yes.
The
there you
warm-up
go.
for the main event.
Karen is such a good marketing person, I'm telling you. Well, thank you for being with us today and sharing your story and sharing your experiences, but most of all, sharing your energy with our listeners, with those who are studying to try to build a design career, students who are listening who are thinking about a career pathway, talking about women in leadership, talking about the American Furniture Hall of Fame, putting that all together for us is in a story called Karen McNeill. Well, thank you for being with us today.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Design Between the Lines is produced by Element Studio with the International Society of Furniture Designers. We record in High Point, North Carolina. To find videos of these podcasts, be sure to subscribe to the International Society of Furniture Designers YouTube channel. To learn more about ISFD, visit isfd.org. And don't forget to subscribe to hear more industry stories of design between the lines.